morning to all you cool cats and kittens on what is, again, a feel-good Friday for the rundown with Payton and Marcus. I'm Marcus, he's Payton. What's up, man? How you doing?
Like I said, man, doing swell. That's how I would describe how I'm doing. Swell.
It's always good to feel swell, though. Too.
Oh, yeah. Big time. Big swell guy.
Like, if you have to, like, rank the feelings that you could have, swell has got to be, like, towards the top of the list, if not at the top of the list. Feeling swell is second to none. It's super early. It's 10 o'clock in the morning. Well, it's not super early, but 10 o'clock in the morning on a Friday feels super early, though, just because Fridays are, like, it's the end of the work week. You're just trying to, like, just get that one last push.
Yeah.
So it feels early, but it's not. But, like, it's Friday. So let's jump right.
It's Friday and we're live, bro. It's a good day. It's a good day.
It's a good day. Whenever the rundown with Payton and Marcus is live, it's a good day. So just know that you guys are gonna have a good day today because it's Friday. Let's jump right in here. College football playoffs are right around the corner, right? Like, teams are officially getting bowl eligible. We saw Kansas tear down their goalpost, as everyone does, because they're now bowl eligible for the first time since 2008. So the college football playoff picture as it stands today has Georgia won?
It's Georgia, Ohio State at 2, Michigan at 3, and TCU at 4 right now.
Thank you. Massive brain fart there. Tennessee is 5, and I think Oregon is 6. Yes.
Yeah.
What's the biggest like thing you notice on all this is that Alabama, for the first time in a long time, and what might be for the first time in the Nick Saban era, is not a top 6 football team in college, and they don't have a shot. Well, they have a shot. Alabama's always got a shot, but from what it seems right now, Alabama is a long shot to make it into the college football playoffs. It means we could come January, we could be looking at a college football playoff with no Alabama. But for the 6 teams that are still in the mix, and for the 4 teams that have a spot locked in, though, which team do you think is most likely going to win it all when it's all said and done, based on the 6, I guess, that we've got in there?
I mean, I hate to be the boring guy, but, like, Georgia's the favorite to win it all. And I get that you kind of, like, don't want to pick Georgia because, like, oh my gosh, like, they're, like, the favorites and all this and that, but they have a great defense. We saw what they did to Tennessee, who was blowing the doors off of almost everyone and putting up points on almost everybody in the nation. They held them to 13 points. Mm-hmm. This Georgia defense is legit, and I think that they have everything put together. Obviously, offensively, coaching wise, defense wise, Georgia's the favorite to win it all. That's who I would pick to win the college national championship.
I don't know if this is less boring or more boring, but Ohio State's going to win it all. Yeah. I'd be shocked if
it's equally as boring. We're just boring today.
It's equally as boring. What I will say, though, is shout out to TCU.
Yeah.
For being in the mix.
And I think how about it?
Right. And I think this is why expanding the college football playoff in 2024 is going to be so cool and it's going to make things so interesting. It's because we're not just going to basically see the SEC and the Big Ten dominating the college football playoff picture. Like, we're going to get teams from the Big 12 week. Well, maybe not the Pac-12, because as we discussed the week 1 of the show, Pac-12 is dead.
Yeah, but even then, like, we counted out the Pac-12 on week 1 of the show, and we did. We really dug into them, but like they've turned into a pretty solid conference on the back half of the year. So I'm pretty impressed with what's going on there.
Again, as a fan of Oregon, it pains me that Pac-12 is dead. Maybe, and I hope that by 2024 the Pac-12 is no longer dead, because I want to see Oregon prosper. I want the good old days of Oregon football to be back. But you've got Georgia, you've got Ohio State, you've got TCU, you've got Michigan. I think if nothing else, I think this season is the season where I think we finally give Harbaugh his flowers, because, like, everywhere Harbaugh goes, Harbaugh wins football games, and Harbaugh wins football games really well and turns programs around. And Michigan, for the first time in a long time, since Harbaugh's been back, but especially this season, Michigan's being looked at as a legitimate team that could win it all. I don't think this is their year to win it all, but, like, you look at what they did last year. They played really good ball last year. They were just on the outside. This year, they're in the mix. Hopefully, they're still on the top board come bowl weekend to be in one of those games to get into the championship. Maybe they won't be, but, like, if not this year, I think we're talking next year about Michigan being legitimately, like, a favorite to win the college football national championship when it's all said and done, because they just keep getting better under Harbaugh. It's really good. And also, it's unfortunate that Tennessee is now out of the top 4 because of their loss. But again, when you look at the other teams that are in the top 4, they're all undefeated. So it's simple math. It makes sense. But hopefully Tennessee can sneak back.
I think Tennessee's going to find a way to sneak back in.
I hope so, because watching Tennessee football has been great this season. Rocky Top has been on fire. And that's when you go up against the defending champs. I know it's a defending champs. I know with Georgia, that was a big game. They were the number 1 team going in, and Georgia was number 3. They only posted 13 points. Georgia's defense has been incredible this season, as they were last season. It's just really tough. So for the sake of the fandom, I hope Tennessee gets back in there, because that would be absolutely electric to see Tennessee football back in the college football playoffs. But as we mentioned, Alabama's not in the college football playoff picture right now, and it doesn't look like they're going to be able to get back in. They've got 2 losses. The 6 teams ahead of them are undefeated or have 1 loss on the season. It's really tough. I think they have less than a 25% chance of getting in at this point, which I think is the lowest, it's been since Nick Saban's been the head coach. Paul Feinbaum has recently gone as far as to say that this is the worst coaching job we've seen from Nick Saban in his career. Do you agree with that? Like, how bad has it been for Alabama this season? I know it's been bad, but how bad has it been?
It's been bad. You have arguably what could possibly be the best quarterback in the nation in Bryce Young, and what could possibly be the best defensive player in the nation, Will Anderson. So when you have the best player on each side of the ball in the nation, and you are losing these games both inside of their conference, like both of these losses were tough SEC losses. That is not something that Alabama is normally used to doing. Normally they go in these SEC teams and they own it, despite the fact that this is the toughest conference in the nation. So it just feels weird. These close games that Alabama normally pulls through, and they normally get the edge in these close games, even on the road, they're not getting it. And they look like it's undisciplined. They're getting a lot of penalties, a lot of costly mistakes at very bad times in a game that normally Nick Saban coach teams don't do. It just feels different. They look, for the first time in like over a decade, they don't look indestructible. It's a weird new reality with Alabama.
It is. And it's and like you mentioned, look, we all know that Will Anderson Jr., I would say, depending on how things shake out, Will Anderson Jr. or Bryce Young are going to be the number 1 pick in the draft in April. It's going to be that way depending on who's at the top of the board. Like, that's how it's going to be. And like you said, when you got the best quarterback in football, and you have the best defensive player in football, both of whom have been on Heisman watch since week 1. I think that's died down because of the record, but are still phenomenal players. It is very, very, very hard to come up with a reason why your team is 7-2, losing to a team that, while on paper, I get it, LSU is the 7th ranked team in the nation. LSU has not been a good football team this season for much of the season. They've won some close ones. They've had some wins, but this has not been a good LSU football team. So Alabama losing this game is a shocker, but also they're supposed to own the SEC, and they haven't been owning the SEC so far this season, and it hasn't been good. So before we jump into Josh Allen and Jeff Saturday and things, let's talk about the weekly pick'em. So
last week the Raiders let me down, bro. 17 points. It again for like the 3rd time this year.
It's getting to a point where sometimes I feel like so last week made me nervous. I'm not gonna lie, because we did only have the one disagreement, and I was really strong on my Jaguars pick on the show. And I got off the show and I told him, I am a little bit nervous, but I'm glad the Jaguars were able to pull it through. The Raiders stink. There's now no Darren Waller. He's on IR. There's no Hunter Renfrow. He's on IR. This is already a dysfunctional offense. But before we get into week 10, as you can see here for week 9, the gap is as close as it's been since week 2. It's a 1-game gap. Payton is 80-54-1. I'm 79-55-1. We are head-to-head now at 11-9 Payton's way, and I have a 19-9 primetime record to Payton's 18-10. So week 10, of course, is where things have to get spicy, because this is where Payton wants to start disagreeing with me left and right. The top of the graphic is a mistake. Payton and I did not pick the Falcons to win last night. I don't know why, but we did not pick the Falcons to win.
We changed our minds.
We picked the Panthers to win last night and just didn't save the right graphic. But so we'll fix that. So as it stands so far this season, or so far this week, Payton and I are 1-0 in the week. We've got, 3 disagreements? Bucks in Seattle, in Germany. Payton has Seattle winning. I have the Bucks. Payton has his Browns beating the Dolphins on the road. and Payton, and I have the Colts. Again, Payton, you're picking the Raiders.
I know.
No Darren Waller and no Hunter Renfrow.
I get it, bro. I get it.
Indianapolis.
Because the Colts suck. The Colts are throwing out Jeff Saturday as their head coach. Jeff Saturday hasn't coached since he hasn't coached anywhere above high school. He had a losing record in high school. We talk about Cliff Kingsbury having a losing record in college, going to the NFL and flopping in the NFL. Jeff Saturday coached in high school at like a Catholic high school and had a losing record. How am I going to pick the Colts to win when the guy calling the plays doesn't even know what's going on? It's a complete mess. And I get that the Raiders are a complete mess, but at least like they have the same complete mess that they've had that since week 1. So they're a bit used to the complete mess. The Colts are like in a complete shock right now.
The Raiders don't have Darren Waller. They don't have Hunter Renfrow. They're not winning this football game. They're just not winning this football game. And I get it. Jeff Saturday doesn't have the coaching qualifications, but let's not act like Jeff Saturday doesn't know football. Like Jeff Saturday
he knows football.
Jeff Saturday has played center with Peyton Manning, one of the greatest quarterbacks to ever do it. He's a multi-time All-Pro. He's a multi-time Pro Bowler. Like Jeff Saturday knows football, and we all know that centers can call plays because if anything is changed at the line of scrimmage, the center has to relay those information to the guards and to the tackle. So Jeff Saturday doesn't have the coaching qualifications, sure, but he is more than capable of taking Indianapolis into Allegiant Stadium this Sunday and beating down on the Raiders with no Darren Waller and no Hunter Renfrow. Any game after that, I don't know. But because it's the Raiders, I am more than confident in Jeff Saturday's abilities to get the win this week in his first game as head coach. That's number one. Number two, and more importantly, the Browns are going to Miami.
Correct. And I'm going to be there.
No team, shout out to you for that. No team this season has beaten Miami because of the 55,000 degree difference on the sidelines. What makes you think the Browns are going to do any better than the Bills or the Vikings or any other team that has gone to Miami this season?
I'll tell you why. Nicholas Chubb. That's why. The Dolphins' run defense looks terrible. They gave up a ton of yards on the ground up to Chicago last week and a ton of points to Chicago last week. And overall, their run defense has not been good all year. And if the Browns have proven anything over the last few years, regardless of their quarterback play, Nick Chubb's going to run that ball. And it's going to work as long as Kevin Stefanski gives him the ball. Because for some reason, Stefanski wants to throw the ball sometimes. Just run the dang ball. That's really plain and simple for the Browns.
And you're also banking on the secondary holding up against Jalen Waddle and Tyreek Hill.
Yeah, well, Denzel Ward is back.
So?
Listen, you're never going to stop Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle. You're never going to do that. There's not a single. You could say like, oh, you're going to bank on the secondary stopping them.
There are two people in the history of football that you could call on to stop Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle. It's Deion Sanders and it's Deion Sanders. That's it.
Yeah.
Okay.
Deion Sanders is gone. So as of right now, there's absolutely nobody who can stop them.
You're absolutely right. So I want Nick Chubb to do well. He's on one of my fantasy teams. He has carried one of my fantasy teams to mediocrity because it's not a good team. So this year I tried to do two different things. I have obviously the podcast league that we're in, and then I have another league that I'm like personally, and then I have another league that's personal. And the second league that I did this further. I was like, I'm going to try to see if I can draft the worst team possible and just have one good player. My one good player is Nick Chubb. And somehow we're like 4-5. So it's really disappointing that Nick Chubb, I mean, it's not, but it also is that Nick Chubb has carried my team to 4 wins because I wanted that team to be a winless team. Anyway, I'm weird like that. But what's the last one? Oh yeah. Hawks and Bucks.
Bucks. I know you are the biggest Geno Smith hater. When are you going to hop on the wave, bro? Everyone loves this guy. Everybody loves this guy. He warms our hearts. He's an inspiration to never give up. I love Geno Smith, and as of right now, they're a better team than the Bucs.
No. The inspiration to never give up is John Cena. That was his tagline for 20 years in the WWE.
Don't come here talking about WWE.
Okay? Don't you ever disrespect the sacred art that is world wrestling and Payton J.
Sacred art.
Don't ever do that again.
Art.
That's number one. Number two, and most importantly, I am not a Geno Smith hater, and you and Steezy are going to stop pushing this pro-Geno propaganda agenda that makes me out to be a bad guy. I am what is called a realist. Okay, the truth hurts and the reality sucks.
Truth hurts.
And the reality of the situation is Geno Smith, for much of his NFL career, has been a backup, and we all know that sometimes backups play well. Ryan Fitzpatrick in Miami a couple years ago had a pretty dang good season. No one was giving nearly as much praise as to Ryan Fitzpatrick as we've been giving to Geno Smith. Number two, Geno Smith is okay. He's not playing bad ball. Never once this season have I said Geno Smith has played bad ball. I've said he hasn't been playing MVP caliber football, but he hasn't been playing bad ball. I'd be dumb to think that he's been playing bad football. Number three, and most importantly, Tom Brady, since being divorced, is undefeated. And I think that means a lot. All right, we're talking about a Tom Brady here and a defense that just needs a little bit of oil to get the wheels turning the right way. Well, I mean, it's at home, but it's on the road because it's to Germany. Tom Brady's undefeated in international games. And if you think Geno Smith and the Seattle Seahawks are going to hand Tom Brady his first loss outside of America, you're crazy. The Bucs are fine. Byron Leftwich is fine. Todd Bowles is fine. The defense is fine. Am I mildly concerned about their inability to run the football? Of course I am. It's always concerning when your team can't run the football. Am I still concerned about the offensive line? Of course I am. I've been concerned about the offensive line since the offseason. But this is Tom Brady. This is the guy that you and everyone else told me can overcome all odds, despite the O-line being bad, despite the team being old, despite not having Gronk, despite the change in the coaching staff, that he could still rise to the occasion and be great because he's the greatest quarterback of all time. That's what you said. That's what everyone else told me. When I sat here and I tried to tell everybody that they'll win the division, they'll make the playoffs, but they won't be scorching the earth the way that everyone thinks they will because that offensive line is terrible. Here they are. The offensive line is terrible. They haven't been scorching the earth. They're still going to win the division because the division sucks. But Tom Brady and the Buccaneers are going to beat the Seattle Seahawks. There is nothing that Seattle can do or has done this season that can convince me otherwise. There's just not. There just isn't anything that Seattle can do that has done. It doesn't make me a hater. It just means I tell you all the time, bro. I'd much rather be late to the party than early to the party and be wrong. And you and Steezy and everyone else that loves Geno Smith, you guys are early to the party and you guys are lining up that parade. And then the Seahawks, they're gonna nosedive straight to the ground.
Marcus, you know what your problem is?
Going to be hurt. What's my problem? Talk to me.
You don't have any fun, bro.
I do have fun.
You do not have any fun. So sometimes you could be early at the wrong party, but then you just show up at the other party at the right time. You don't have to be late to the party every time. Because you need to make sure it's the right party.
It's not about making sure it's the right party. It's because I don't stick my neck out there for people that haven't earned it. Geno Smith hasn't earned me to stick my neck out there and sing his praises on the right. He's
leading the division. He's leading with the defending Super Bowl champions
who have looked like
that division.
Who have looked like garbage this season. Yes, the division with the Arizona Cardinals, who we all know can't finish a season. That division.
All I'm saying is
where the only good team in the division is the 49ers, and they've lost to the 49ers.
I get it.
Team in the division they've lost to.
I get it. Marcus, if I'm asking you this straight up, who's been more impressive, the Seahawks or the Buccaneers?
I'm not saying the Seahawks haven't been more impressive. I'd be stupid to say that they haven't been. Of course, the Seahawks have been more impressive. What I'm saying is I think that the narrative of the Seahawks this season has been buoyed by the fact that we all, the fans and the media, expected that because Russ was leaving, that this team would suffer. That's what we all thought. We all thought that Russ would leave and the team would suffer. The team's not suffering, and now people are talking about it. Not only is the team not suffering, but the team that Russ went to is suffering. So the Broncos are suffering, the Seahawks are not suffering, and the Seahawks are at the top of a division that has not been good. Like, I get it. The NFC West has, in years past, been a very tough division. I don't care about that. This season, the NFC West is garbage. I don't want to hear anything about the fact that the Seahawks are sitting at the top of the toughest division in football, because right now, the toughest division in football is either the NFC East or the AFC East, because of the records and because of what the four teams in those divisions have done. Those are the only two divisions in football this season with winning records, and the NFC East right now has the best combined record for division in the NFL, and up into week 8, I believe it was, they had the best combined record ever since the merger. Like, that's how great the NFC East has been this season, and the AFC East has been just as good. The Seahawks have been playing great football, and I get it. What are they, 6-3 now, or 7? What are they? 6-3? or I don't,
6-3.
like 6-3 or 6-2 or something like that. I understand that they got 6 wins. They have 2 more wins than most people thought they'd have in the entire season. I understand all of that, but the Seahawks as a team, as a football team, when you start to pick apart what this team looks like, this team has been a middle of the pack football team statistically. The difference is, and the reason why we're talking and singing all these praises to the Seahawks is because Russ is gone. We all thought Russ leaving would mean the Seahawks would be bottom of the barrel. The Seahawks aren't bottom of the barrel, but the Broncos are bottom of the barrel. And now it's all praise His Majesty Geno Smith. No, you're not fooling me with this pro-Seahawks propaganda. If Seattle goes to Germany and beats the Buccaneers, shout out to them for that. That would be their first real win of the season. And they beat the Giants a couple weeks ago. So that'd be like their second real win of the season. But the Seahawks have beaten who's in front of them. I get it. They also have lost to 2 bad football teams. They've lost to the Falcons. And they've also lost to the Saints. And they've also been blown out by the 49ers. But no one wants to talk about that because they got into a shootout with the worst defense in the history of football in the Lions, and they won that game. And then they beat a banged-up Chargers team, and they won that game. So let's give them credit for that. And they beat the Broncos week 1. Sure, you want to give them credit for that? Sure, we give them credit for that. But that was very bad game management down the stretch for the Broncos. So, if we're going to be realistic about what's happened this season for the Seattle Seahawks, let's be realistic. And the reality is, Geno's played great football. Of course, he's played great football. The Seahawks are winning football games. Of course, they're winning football games. But the only reason why the Seahawks being 6-3 is any kind of news is because Russell Wilson's not the quarterback. Because if Russell Wilson was the quarterback of the Seattle Seahawks and they were 6-3 and they had a blowout loss to the 49ers and 2 bad losses to the Saints and to the Falcons, the narrative wouldn't be Russ is the MVP. The narrative would be it's inexcusable that Russell Wilson got blown out by the 49ers and lost to the Falcons and the Saints. Let's be honest. So, I'm not a hater. I'm just
okay. So what you're saying is you're not going to be like Steezy. You're not going to start calling him Heno Smith.
I'm not going to call him Heno Smith. I'm not going to inquire to Tariq Woolen about whether or not he's been called by Wendy's for a 4-for-4 for life. I'm not going to call Tariq Woolen Reek the Freak or dub his side of the field Reek Island. If there's any cornerback in the NFL today that deserves an island named after him, it's Sauce Gardner, the defensive rookie of the year.
He's unbelievable. And
we need to stop acting like he's not the defensive rookie of the year because he's been locking down. He's allowed 1 touchdown all season. He has been on fire this season. But no, I'm not going to call it Geno Smith. I'm not putting the knee pads on for the Seattle Seahawks, Payton, if that's your question. No, it's not happening. I have
all right. When they win the Super Bowl this year, Not just joking. They're not winning the damn Super Bowl. Sorry, right. Steve.
I'm not putting the knee pads on for the Seattle Seahawks ever. So let's kind of dive into the ins and outs of this schedule here this week. Josh Allen has a UCL injury in his right elbow, and the belief right now is that Case Keenum is going to be the starting quarterback for the Bills this week when they go to Minnesota.
No, Minnesota goes to them.
When they host the Minnesota Vikings. So, you and I both have the Vikings winning this game. I mean, rightfully so, you don't have your starting quarterback. It's kind of hard to pick your team.
Yeah.
Is there any chance, though, that the Bills, with Case Keenum as the starter, could get this win against the 7-1 Vikings?
Absolutely. Case Keenum is a very viable backup in this league. That's why they went out and got him, knowing that Josh Allen does go out and take a lot of hits. So you do need to make sure you have a good option as a backup quarterback. We've seen Case Keenum come in and win games for the Minnesota Vikings, took them to an NFC championship game as the backup quarterback when Teddy Bridgewater went down. I mean, if you're a backup who has NFC championship game experience, any given Sunday, you could come in with a week of preparation and play well. So I do think there's a chance that the Bills do win, but with the way the Vikings have been playing, I think it's going to be rough. I don't think that they're going to blow out the Bills just because Josh Allen's out. But Case Keenum has gotten a week of preparation because Josh Allen hasn't practiced, so he's been getting the first team reps. So he's prepared to come in and start for this game. I don't think they'll end up winning, though.
So let's talk about the Bills a little bit more in depth because I saw a stat that was interesting. The Buffalo Bills this season have scored 25 touchdowns. Josh Allen is responsible for 23 of them. We all thought the Bills were, going to be the best team in football this season. We all thought the Bills were going to be a lock out of the AFC to make it to the Super Bowl. And most people think that the Bills are actually going to win the Super Bowl this season. This is going to be their year. Is it at all concerning that the Buffalo Bills so far this season have scored 25 touchdowns, and Josh Allen is responsible for 86% of the points that they've scored this season? 96%, excuse me. How concerning is that from a long-term standpoint?
It's concerning. From a long-term standpoint, it is certainly concerning. We've seen that kind of happen out with Cam Newton, who got banged up and fizzled out pretty quick. But as far as this year goes, it's as expected. Josh Allen is the offense. He's the offense through the air. He's the offense through the ground. My biggest problem with the Bills is that they have no viable option at running back. And that's the main reason why Josh Allen has to do everything, is because they can't run the ball. And I get that we're in a day and age where high-powered, high-flying passing offenses are the trend, and that's what's really setting the league on fire. But teams that win close games, which is the Buffalo Bills' issue, they cannot win in close games. They run the ball. Teams that win in close games are normally really good at running the ball because it gives them an advantage in the red zone and in terms of controlling the clock.
Unless it's the Chiefs, because of the Chiefs in a close game, it's either a shootout or they had to come back from behind.
Well, yeah, but the Chiefs are a different story.
Yeah.
But for the most part, you do have to have that in your bag.
Yeah.
And the Bills don't have that in their bag. So, yes, Josh Allen scoring 23 of their 25 touchdowns so far this year is indicative of them having a problem and needing to get better at running the football and having a more balanced offense.
Listen, I think the Bills are going to be fine. I am interested to see what the Bills look like this week. I'm interested to see what the game plan is. I think Case Keenum can do just fine. I think that Stephon Diggs has been the best receiver in football this season, not named Tyreek Hill. I think Gabe Davis has been the best non-number one option wide receiver in the league this season, as he was the last season, especially in the backstretch of the season. Like, they've got the talent. I just don't know if they have enough. And I think that Josh Allen is the enough, where you look at the Bills and you say they could beat a 7-1 Minnesota Vikings team. Mm-hmm. So on the other side of this, though, you've got the Vikings who are 7-1, who are going to Buffalo. Does this win still mean what this win would mean if Josh Allen was the quarterback, if they get the win? Or is this just going to be another one of those things where we look at it and we say, okay, well, now the Vikings are 8-1, but they didn't beat Josh Allen? Like, what is going to be the narrative for the Vikings heading into week 11 if they do, in fact, go into Buffalo and get this win without the Bills having Josh Allen?
Well, if Minnesota goes and wins, no one's going to really be talking about them, despite that they're 8-1, because they did beat the Bills like they should have. They handled business against the backup quarterback. Good job. Now, if they lose to the Bills, everyone's going to say, see, Minnesota was fake. So those are the two different narratives that we could see come Monday about the Minnesota Vikings, is that if they go in and they beat the Bills in Buffalo, no one's going to really talk about it because it is the backup quarterback. And that does mean something, even though it's going to be a tough game and it's always hard to go play in Buffalo on the road. It's a hard place to go and play.
Yes.
It's still the backup quarterback. It's still not beating the Bills at full strength, which is worth noting. But if you lose to the Bills not at full strength, then you're the phonies. And everyone's going to say, see, they're fake. They just had an easy schedule, had some things go their way, and they got on a roll.
Payton, it's not too late to show back up the party the party that you started at the beginning.
I started the party.
Saying that the Vikings are going to the Super Bowl and you've abandoned your party.
I didn't abandon it, though.
You did.
I didn't. I said, listen, I thought the Vikings were going to be really good.
Are they not really good?
They have been.
They have been. Had a game all season.
I know. I get it.
Look at me defending the Vikings.
I know. You don't have to defend the Vikings to me. I picked them to make the Super Bowl. I was a little bit disappointed in the dynamics of this offense off the bat. It has gotten better, especially as they've gotten used to Kevin O'Connell's new system there. Kevin O'Connell will not win Coach of the Year like I thought he would. But the Minnesota Vikings are still a very good football team. After the first 5 weeks, I wasn't feeling the contender vibes from them. We'll see how it goes for the next few weeks, but if they continue to win and they continue to look impressive, then maybe we'll get the contender vibes back.
Sounds like you're hedging your bet.
No, I'm not, bro.
It sounds like you're hedging your bet. So, as we alluded to earlier, Jeff Saturday was named the interim head coach for the Indianapolis Colts for the remainder of this season. as a fan of Jeff Saturday, I love this. And you heard on ESPN that all of the people that he's worked with at ESPN also love this. But you also heard guys like Marcus Spears and Stephen A. Smith mention just that it's a hard thing to look at when you consider all of the coaches that are in the NFL that kind of that spend their life's work so that they could have the opportunity to be named the interim head coach of a football team, whether it's within the Colts organization or whether it's outside. So where do you stand on the hiring of Jeff Saturday as the Colts' interim head coach for the remainder of the season?
It just seems like a gimmick, like a marketing gimmick to try to bring attention to the team, even though they've been bad. Just because it's like, oh, look, guys, like we're bringing in one of our former players. Hey, like, you know, he's our new head coach for the rest of the year. Like it's almost like they're trying to find a way to have something marketable to sell to like make more money, because at the end of the day, that's all these NFL organizations are trying to do is make more money. And sometimes if you can't win, you have to come up with a weird strategy of bringing in Jeff Saturday as your head coach. I think it is a little bit of a shame, though. There are definitely guys probably that were already on the coaching staff that have been waiting their entire lives and working hard and working up the ranks to one day be a head coach in the National Football League, or at least get their shot to maybe even be an offensive coordinator next year, a defensive coordinator, or keep moving up the ranks and the ladders. And these guys aren't going to get that opportunity now that, at least in the Indianapolis Colts organization, now that Jeff Saturday is the interim head coach. And it's sadly, I just don't think it's something that Jim Irsay considered. I think he was just looking at like, let's make a splash. Let's hire a former player, despite him not having any coaching experience whatsoever. But we're going to be talked about, and we're going to probably sell a little bit more tickets than we would without him.
That's fair. I mean, you look at Jeff Saturday. He's been an advisor for the Colts organization since he's retired, as far as what they do for football. But I mean, I love Jeff Saturday. I love watching Jeff Saturday talk football, and I love watching him on First Take and on Get Up and all that good stuff. But again, when you look at who was on, like, I mean, if not, like Marvin Harrison is in the wide receiver room. I think he's the wide receiver coach for Indianapolis. You've got other coordinators and other position coaches that are within the organization that could have you know, been more than deserving of the boost, right? Of being named the interim head coach, at least for this season, right? You look at what they did with Vaughn in Brooklyn for the Brooklyn Nets, right? Like he was on the coaching staff, he was the assistant coach, and they just named him the interim head coach, and now he's the head coach of the basketball team, right? So it's an interesting decision nonetheless. And I, again, as a fan of Jeff Saturday, I can be happy for Jeff Saturday as a human being, but also be disappointed in the fact that the Colts didn't look within the organization first to hire someone. And maybe they didn't think that someone wasn't worthy. But either way, right, when you're talking about this kind of situation, like look at what the Raiders did last season. The Raiders just took their special teams coach, Rick Bisaccia, and they gave him the bump up to be the interim head coach for the rest of the season. And the team rallied behind them, and it ended up leading.
And he made a pretty good name for himself too.
He made a great name for himself. He was in the rumblings to be the head coach, if not there, but elsewhere for the head coaching openings. Obviously, he ends up in Green Bay as the special teams coach. But the team rallied behind him, and they found themselves in the playoffs. Like I think the Colts could have had a similar situation like that on their hands, where you take a guy that's already in the organization, whether it's a Marvin Harrison or someone else, you give him that interim head coach, you bump him up. Now the team is rallied behind this guy because they work with this guy for the first 9 games of the season. Now they've been with him, they see him, they work with him. He's the position coach. Now he's the interim head coach. Maybe you get a little bit of what happened in Las Vegas last year and Indianapolis this year. Maybe the team rallied behind him, get some wins off, and now we're talking about the Colts potentially sneaking into the playoffs on the back half of the season, like we were with the Raiders. So again, it's possible to be happy for Jeff Saturday and also be disappointed in the lack of due process. It appeared anyway that the Colts made. So before we get out of here, must win Sunday. Playoff time is pretty much right around the corner. We're coming up on Thanksgiving, which is crazy to think because I swear the season just started like 2 days ago.
It's gone in a blink of an eye, bro.
It's gone in a blink of an eye. So there are a lot of teams I think that we all can acknowledge are pretty much virtually locked into the playoffs. And at the top of that list, obviously, we're talking about the Eagles, we're talking about the Bills, we're talking about the Chiefs, we're talking about, the Dolphins, and we're talking about the Vikings, right? There's some other teams that are kind of in the hunt of the playoffs, and depending on how things go, they could slide in or out of playoff contention. There are also some teams, though, that are not in the picture and they need to start getting some wins together to maybe get themselves in the picture. Or maybe there's teams in the picture that just really needs to get their statement win. Which team this season is must-win Sunday for them? Who needs to win on Sunday or Monday?
Packers. The Packers really need to win on Sunday. This is getting ridiculous here. I don't think they will. We both picked against them. I forgot who they were playing, but I know I picked against them.
They're playing the Cowboys.
They're playing the Cowboys. Yeah, they're not going to win that game. But if you're Aaron Rodgers and you're the Green Bay Packers, you need to find a way to pull out a win at home in Lambeau. I don't understand what's going on. That game against Detroit, that was the worst I've seen the Packers play my entire life. That was unbelievable how badly they played. They had opportunity after opportunity to win the game. The Lions had opportunity after opportunity to win the game by 30, and they kept letting the Packers back in. And normally you give Aaron Rodgers opportunities to get back into the game, and he takes advantage of it, and you end up losing. Even if you give him 50 seconds left with no timeouts, down by 4 on the 1 yard line, he's going down 99 yards and scoring. Like, that was Aaron Rodgers back in the day. That's the Aaron Rodgers that I remember. That's the Aaron Rodgers who is the back-to-back reigning MVP in the NFL at the moment. But what we're seeing this year isn't that. And I know, Marcus, I know it breaks your heart. I know. But they need to win this Sunday. Because if not, they're done.
It's not mentally prepared to be sent into a spiral of depression at 10:45. For those of you guys that don't know, me and Payton don't discuss what we're going to say on the show. We just get the topics together. And say. I didn't know Payton was going there right now, so I wasn't meant to.
Yeah, I'm sorry, man. I know it
wasn't meant to be
a tough spot, bro.
This team is god awful. Must win Sunday. I got to be honest. I think when you look at the schedule and you look at the teams that are playing, honestly, it sounds crazy, but I only think that there's one team that has to win this Sunday. And the one team that has to win this Sunday is the Denver Broncos. You look at the matchups, right? Like, the Vikings and the Bills are going to be fine regardless. The Lions and the Bears are going to be fine regardless because they're not going anywhere. Right? The Chiefs are the Chiefs. The Jags are the Jags. The Browns aren't having any expectations. And the Dolphins, I think, even if they do lose, the Dolphins are still good enough where they can bounce back from it. The Texans stink, and I think the Giants, we all recognize, aren't a legit team. But a win against the Texans doesn't cement that they are a good team because the Texans aren't good, right? The Saints are bad. The Steelers are bad. We already talked about the Colts and the Raiders. You got the Cowboys and the Packers down packed already. The Cardinals are still the Cardinals, and the Rams have been struggling all season. The Chargers are still a little bit banged up, but I don't think this is a must-win for them because the gap between them and the Broncos and the Raiders is so far back that they're really only competing with the Chiefs in their division. The 49ers, I think we all know, are just getting into form. This is about the time of the year where they start getting into form. The Commanders, despite being 4-4, are not really that good of a football team, and the Eagles are undefeated. A loss to the Commanders doesn't look good for Philadelphia, but a win against the Commanders is what's supposed to happen. The only team that has to win this week is the Denver Broncos because the Denver Broncos, if they lose this week, will be 3-7. If the Broncos end week 10 at 3-7, you can kiss the playoffs goodbye.
Yeah.
And they're already on the verge of kissing the playoffs goodbye. Even if they somehow run the table, I don't know if 10-6 is going to be enough, especially in that division. 10-6 will be third place. I don't know if a third place 10-6 in the AFC is going to be enough to make it to the playoffs. Like, the Broncos have to win on the road against Tennessee this week. And I know you and I have the Tennessee Titans winning this week, right? Because they're the better football team. Because Derrick Henry has been responsible for all of their touchdowns since week 7, and rightfully so. Because when he scores touchdowns, they win football games. That's just how it works. The Denver Broncos cannot go to Tennessee and leave out Tennessee without a win. They can't.
No.
They can't. There's no recovering from it. Because, again, as I mentioned earlier, right now, the narrative around the Broncos, or the narrative around the Seahawks right now, is being bolstered because of how bad the Broncos look. Russell Wilson needs to get it together. The Denver Broncos need to get it together. This is not the Denver Broncos that most of the people in America expected. I am not one of those people because I told everybody that this was going to happen. No one wanted to listen to me. But You cannot continue to say, let's ride, and then you go out there and you're not riding Russell Wilson. You cannot continue to go out there and say, let's ride, and you're not riding Nathaniel Hackett. Jerry Jeudy, we thought was going to get moved. He's not moved. He hasn't looked good that season. Courtland Sutton hasn't looked good that season. We know Javonte Williams is out. Melvin Gordon hasn't looked good that season. This O-line hasn't looked good this season. The one player that's looked good on this defense all season has been Patrick Surtain II. Shout out to him. I'm a big fan of Pat. But this Broncos team sucks. I was talking about, this is going to be the no-fly zone part 2. And this is the offense is going to be one of the best offenses in football. This team sucks. From top to bottom, this team is a bad football team. You cannot go to Tennessee and play against a team with a rookie quarterback named Malik Willis with a mediocre defense this season, a mediocre O-line this season, and a team that has no offense outside of Derrick Henry. You cannot go to play that football team this week and lose. Because if you do, as Payton says, stick a fork in you. You're done. There's no coming back from that for the Broncos this season. They're already on the edge. Maybe they could get a couple wins together, and maybe they can start getting into the hunt. But they're 3-6. This is a football team that most people believe was supposed to be in the hunt for the Super Bowl. This is a football team that had to listen to Stevie A. Smith and Justin Marvel all offseason tell me was going to win the AFC West, was going to be a top seed in the AFC, was going to take it all the way, was going to win the Super Bowl. And that Russell Wilson was going to follow the trend of Matt Stafford of a big name going to a new team winning the Super Bowl, and of Tom Brady of a big name going to a new team winning the Super Bowl. That's what I was being told all season, and so far the Broncos haven't been giving me that. But it's not just about this Sunday. It's not just about this season. It's about seasons to come. If the Denver Broncos go lose this football game, that's not just bad for this season. That's bad for the next 6 years of this man's contract that you have now latched onto. Because here's the thing. The older he gets, you're not going to be able to trade him. And you're still going to have to pay him even if you draft his replacement in the up and coming years. We have 6 more years of Denver Broncos in a Russell Wilson in a Denver Broncos uniform. And the first 10 games of the season so far could be the worst 10 games of Russell Wilson's career. They have been. Yeah. This has been the worst start to Russell Wilson's career since he's been in the NFL. We say all the time, we always look at these trades and we say, who wins the trade? Is it the Broncos or is it the Seahawks? A lot of Seahawks fans are like, man, we should have got more for Russell Wilson. Now, looking at me like, man, you should have gave up less. The Broncos should have gave up less to get Russell Wilson because he hasn't been looking like the guy that they traded for. He just has not. The Broncos need a win. They're the only team this week, I think, that need a win. I understand your Packers point, but like even if the Packers do win this week and we improve to 4-6, oh well, bro. Like we've still got to face Philly in 2 weeks. We've still got the Vikings again on the schedule. Like we still have the Rams on the schedule. It's at the point now with the Packers where even if the Packers run the table and go 10-6, which we're not going to do, but let's say the Packers do run the table and the Packers do go 10-6. Are any of us going to be confident that the Packers are going to go into the playoffs and win a playoff game? No, because they haven't shown us that they can go into the playoffs and win a playoff game. Not at home, and especially not on the road. So the Packers, I understand it. It's because of the legacy of like Aaron Rodgers looked really, really bad. And he's the back-to-back MVP, and this offense hasn't looked good. And I'm getting sick of Aaron Rodgers trying to blame Romeo Doubs and Christian Watson and the wide receivers on how bad the offense looked when Aaron Rodgers is just not motivated at all to play football. And this needs to be the last season he steps on a football field. I need to see Aaron Rodgers retire this season. I know it's a crazy thing to say, and it sounds harsh. And I know he's got a couple more years up on the contract because he just signed it in this upcoming offseason or this past offseason, but he's got to go. Unless he gets that love and that fervor he had for football back for the last 2 years, he needs to go because it's one thing to be a rookie quarterback and try to make it in the league. It's another thing to be a rookie wide receiver trying to make it in the league, and your veteran quarterback isn't confident in your ability, but he's also not taking any accountability for his actions, and he's also not putting the extra work with you to get you to where he wants you to be. It's demoralizing for Romeo Doubs. It's demoralizing for Christian Watson. It's demoralizing for Alan Lazard, who I know he's missed a couple games and he's not as young as those two guys are, but he's still a young guy. I bet it's demoralizing for Randall Cobb, who he's known pretty much for his entire professional career. It has to stop. Like, I so desperately want to wake up Monday morning after the Packers get an improbable win on the Cowboys, so I can talk my talk just on the simple fact that we suck, but we still beat the Cowboys, a team that could be contending for Odell Beckham Jr. and potentially a Super Bowl this season. I want to do that so bad, but it's not happening. The Cowboys are going to come to Lambeau. They're going to drop 30. They're going to get us back for the Dez call it game because Dez did call it. They're going to get us back for all the other times that we beat them in the playoffs and all this other stuff, and that's fine. The Packers suck, and as much as I want to say that they're in a must-win situation, they're just not. Because if this week is must win, that means every other week of the season is must win. And this team just don't have it in them to go must win across the table and run the table like they did in years past. So the only team to me that's in a must win situation is the Denver Broncos, just because of the simple fact that the Broncos have not been as advertised. And if they don't win this week, it's very hard to look at the rest of the schedule and figure out when they're gonna win because their schedule is not easy the rest of the way.
Yeah, that and if the Broncos don't win this week, like you said, against a rookie quarterback, against a team that doesn't have any offense aside from Derrick Henry, bro, in like 2 or 3 weeks, Nathaniel Hackett might be filing for unemployment, bro. Like he's on the hot seat. And like I get it's only been 10 games, but this team is vastly underperformed expectations, like historically underperformed expectations. And now you're paying your quarterback $250 million over the next 6 years, who also sucks. That's a bad look. That's a bad look.
It is. It's a super bad look. So, early morning rundown we got for you guys today. It's been incredible. A lot of different things we talked about. It's always a pleasure to get on here with Payton and talk sports, football, and all that good stuff. It's always a pleasure to go live for you guys. I know we were supposed to be going live on Thursdays. I know, but life has happened and it just hasn't worked out.
My work schedule doesn't cooperate with that. Like
it just hasn't worked out the past couple days. So we're not abandoning Thursdays. We don't want to just abandon the show altogether and not record the show. So a Feel Good Friday. So for the 2 people that watched during the show, thank you. For the rest of you that are going to watch the show later on in the day when you're up and on your lunch break or something, thank you guys as well. And we'll be back next week on Thursday or on Friday or on Tuesday or
on whenever we want. We'll be back next week.
Whatever day Peyton's work schedule allows us to be back on is when we'll be back.
Yeah.
So, yeah, man. Thanks you guys for watching. And as always, you guys have a good Feel Good Friday.